Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a new series we're doing this summer. As you well know, Rabbi Turk has asked me to sub for him during the summer, and rather than going linear ahead in the book of Genesis in a way that may not reflect his style or approach, I've decided to do a little series here. And the series is called Great Lives and Defining Moments. And obviously there were a lot of very great characters, both male and female, in the Torah, and we can't cover all of them. But I decided to pick a few, some that you're familiar with from your studies here over the years, and some that, unless we all live to be 180 years old, it's hard to imagine that the once weekly Bible studies class at Jewish Heritage Center is going to get you to the book of Judges. You know, what did it take? 6 years to knock off Genesis? 8. Okay. So we should all live and be well and learn about Samson, inside. But in the meantime, we'll be fast forwarding it. At any rate, tonight we're going to be studying Moshe Rabeinu and the breaking of the Luchos. And I want to give a few prefaces before I start speaking about Moshe Rabeinu. First preface, as always, is to thank the good folks at TorahAnytime.com for recording these classes and making them available to a much wider public. And we're dedicating the schus of tonight's Torah learning to the refuah, to the healing of Soyachevet Bas Chanamasha. Number two, when we talk about great lives and defining moments, when you look at the resume, if you will, or the bullet point biographies of great people, Jewish or Lahavdil, even Gentile for that matter, there's usually more than one great defining moment. And what we have to realize when we talk about a defining moment, let me give you a model, a very pedestrian model. Rashi zt'zl used to say that the more ephemeral, the nimshal, the more coarse the mashal has to be. Let's talk the world of sports for a moment, okay? There was a swimmer, Phelps, at the last Olympic Games. He broke a very old record set by Mark Spitz, Mexico City in '68. Spitz won, I think it was 7 swimming gold medals. And at the last Olympics, I think that this fellow Phelps won 8, 9, some 10, I don't know, 8. Okay, a ridiculous amount of gold medals. Okay, so as it goes, unfortunately, with most jocks and athletes, most of their great accomplishments in life are before the age of 25, and it seems to be all downhill after that. You would say that's his defining moment. Whenever they write an obituary about Phelps, they're going to talk about his performance at the which games? Where? Beijing Games. Okay. Beijing. So you look at that and you say, okay, great moment. He rose to the occasion. Great moment. Years and years and years and years went into that moment. How many hours of practice went into the swimming pool? Yeah, he was a remarkable physical specimen. I remember reading an article about him at the time that if there were genetic engineers in the lab who could do anything that they wanted to, it would be hard for them to create a more perfect swimmer than this guy Phelps. His wingspan and his double jointedness in his knees, he got 4 inches more kick, thrust out of every kick than the competition, and I think some of his toes were slightly webbed. I mean, just remarkable. I mean, the guy was a mutant, he's almost like a superhero, like an Aquaman kind of swimmer. Okay, but whatever the case may be, there are many, many athletes, if you're a fan of sports at all, who are supremely physically talented and don't have the work ethic to actualize their potential. So yeah, there are great moments. All right. Sometimes it works the other way. Sometimes people do not really prepare and they don't really know what their inner potential is all about until they're confronted with a great challenge, and all of a sudden they find an inner strength or an inner courage or quickness on their feet, an ability to think quickly or to stay calm that they didn't even realize that they possessed. So that's one thing to understand, that when you talk about defining moments, there are both kinds. There are moments that made the person, and there are persons that made themselves their whole lives to be equal to this moment. And how much of that, how many lessons we can apply to our own lives will vary from week to week and from great figure that we're examining to the other. Final preface. Why did I kick it off with Moshe? And Moshe, again, has such an impressive resume, so many defining moments. Okay? The vision of the burning bush, the 10 plagues in Egypt, 7 out of 10 plagues, 6 out of 10, however many Moshe was directly responsible for. The parting of the Red Sea, the war against Amalek, the bringing down of manna, the ascent to heaven to receive the Torah, the staying there 40 days and 40. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. Okay, why did I pick Moshe, and why did I pick this episode of shattering the tablets? And the answer is, it's the season. It's this time of the year. We are now holding what's called as, what's known as, I should say, the 3 weeks, and in particular we moved it into second gear, and it's 9 days. 3 weeks of what? 9 days of what? The 3 weeks are marked by bookend fasts. Next Monday night, Tuesday, we have the fast of Tisha B'Av. That's the red letter day. That's the saddest day of the entire year on the Jewish calendar. We have brochures for our schedule. You're welcome to take them home. And it's a fast day. It's a very serious fast day. It's the only one besides Yom Kippur that starts the night before. It starts Monday night. And that is, like I said, a bookend fast. It's the end of a 3-week long period of mourning. 3 weeks before Tisha B'Av, every single year, this is the way the calendar works out, there's a fast day known as Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, the 17th day of the Jewish month of Tammuz. The direct relationship between these two, the events that they bookend, are the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem and the exile of the Jewish people. The destruction of both temples, both Solomon's temple and Herod's temple, although divided by many centuries, took place on Tisha B'Av, on the 9th day of the month of Av. However, the siege that was laid around the city of Jerusalem, the walls of the old city were broken through. I'm not talking about the walls that you see around the old city now. I'm talking about ancient Jerusalem, David's Jerusalem. The walls of the old city were breached. The siege was successful starting on the 17th day of the month of Tammuz. So that's considered a continuum. There must have been heavy urban street-to-street fighting until finally they reached the Temple Mount and they were able to sack and destroy the temple. It took them fully 3 weeks from the time they breached the wall, but pretty much the war was over. Once they breached the wall, that was the beginning of the end. So that's how we look at the 3 weeks. And the 9 days, starting from Rosh Chodesh Av, from the month of Av, it's considered the most inauspicious month of the Jewish year. And already beginning from the new moon, from the first day of the new month, we're already moving into second gear in terms of Avelus, in terms of mourning. So this is the period of the year that we're in. The beginning bookend fast is the 17th day of the month of Tammuz. And the Mishnah describes 5 historical tragedies that befell us on the month of Tammuz, one of which I already told you, 2 more that pertain to tonight's class is there was some wicked person. It's an argument among the commentaries if this is a Greek or a Babylonian. It's not clear exactly what historical period he lived in, called Apistomos Harasha. Sounds Greek. And he committed something called libricide. Anyone know what libricide is? Killing of a book. Correct. Good on the Greek roots or the Latin roots. I'm not sure what it is. Right? Libra as in library is a book, and side, pesticide, homicide, suicide, deicide. Right? Side means to kill. Killing a book. He burnt a Torah scroll, Apistomos Harasha, and there have been, unfortunately, sadly, a lot of Torah and Talmud burnings throughout Jewish history. There's even a keynote that we saw on Tisha B'Av about the Talmud burnings in Paris in the 16th century, Shali Srufa Be'esh. But this seems to be the first historically significant one. Maybe it was done in public. I don't know exactly why that became, one of the earmarks for the day of the 17th of Tammuz. But in particular, the first libricide, and perhaps the granddaddy of all libricides, was committed by arguably the greatest of all Jews, Moshe Rabeinu, smashing the Luchos. Okay, the Luchos were a book as well. The 2 tablets. Here the book was etched in stone. But just as certainly as you destroy the data on the book when you burn it, we have a tradition that simultaneous, or perhaps a few moments before Moshe Rabbeinu casting down the tablets and smashing them, miraculously the writing that was chiseled into the tablets flew off. Okay, we'll get as the class progresses, we'll get into the meaning of that a little bit more deeply. So this is chronologically the first event of the many tragedies that happened on Tisha B'Av. Okay, chronologically, if you want to go in the historical timeline, the first one was Moshe Rabbeinu shattering the luchos. Okay, now this is a real head scratcher, I think. Anyway, first glance. I don't know how far along you are in the book of Exodus, but even if you're not up to the episode of the smashing of the luchos, you probably know the basic outline of the narrative. What was the smashing of the luchos a reaction to? It didn't happen in a vacuum.
Coming down and seeing people with the golden calf.
Right. The golden calf also happened on the 17th day of the month of Tammuz. So I want to ask you a question. Which of those two is the greater tragedy? Huh?
I thought there was a
golden calf.
Pardon me?
Golden calf.
What, question?
No, I'm getting my dates wrong. That's all. Sorry.
17.
Matan Torah, okay, the prophetic announcement of the Ten Commandments is on 6th day of Sivan, 7th day of Sivan. We call that the holiday of Shavuos. Moshe Rabbeinu ascends for 40 days and 40 nights. Count off 40 days from the 7th day of Sivan is the 17th day of Tammuz. When Moshe Rabbeinu is coming down from the mountain, that is the day, that is the moment, that is the hour that the Jews are worshiping the golden calf. So what's the tragedy? You know, a nation that received the Torah on Mount Sinai 40 days earlier worshiping idols en masse? Or Moshe Rabbeinu breaking two tablets of stone? That's the first thing that should give us pause and cause us to think for a moment. That we don't call the tragedy the worshiping of the idol, we call the tragedy Moshe Rabbeinu's reaction to the worshiping of the idol. Pardon me?
I'm just answering the question.
Right.
Attempting to anyway.
Okay.
We just received the Torah not 40 days ago, and now it's out there. And with Moshe Rabeinu destroying it's like we never had it then.
I think
so it would make the worship. I'm sorry, excuse me a moment. Would make the worshiping of the golden calf, but not, that's not right. Or
when there's a crime and a punishment, what do you bewail more, the crime or the punishment?
Punishment.
Really?
No, the crime.
Okay, so I'm saying, however you want to couch it, but it's some kind of a retribution. It's a reaction. Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't proactive. He didn't make the first move here. Had the Jews not been worshiping the calf, he would not have thrown down and destroyed the luchos.
I was going to say it was a human.
What?
I was going to say it was a human response to what he saw. It just went to prove that Moses was human, and this is how he reacted to something that he couldn't control.
That's some reaction. I mean, I know we're not supposed to be talking about that, but God gave him these words. That's some reaction.
I think he was saying that people didn't deserve the Ten Commandments.
That's some reaction.
That's what I was trying to get at.
What?
No, that's all right.
Okay. So all of these are good ideas. Let's try to examine the texts first. And we're going to try to approach this defining moment, if you will, in the career of Moshe Rabbeinu through the prism of the applicable texts and what some of the great commentaries have to say about it.
This happened before the spies or after the spies?
Before. Yeah. Not everything is in chronological order, but these two events are. The Torah describes
Rabbi.
one second, let me just finish answering him. Torah describes the smashing of the luchos in Parshas Kisisa, in Shmos, in the book of Exodus, and the episode of the spies is not until the book of Numbers, much later. Yes, question.
The reaction of breaking the commandments, was that anger, or was that another way of saying, you know what, you don't deserve it. You don't deserve this.
There are other possibilities. Let's examine it. Let's talk it through. We'll know a little bit more in about half an hour, hopefully. Okay. Hello. Ooh. Okay.
To see so many people kind of
Yeah. Okay. Let's take a look.
Maybe you can move a little bit further situation between the two of you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
31:8.
Okay. What page?
Give me a moment.
Oh, I'm sorry. Not trying to rush you.
That's the page it's supposed to be on.
451.
Just give me a minute here.
No, I don't know whether
Okay. All right, take a look on page 449.
It took me a while to get there.
449. Okay, verse 18. Okay. When God finished speaking to Moshe on Mount Sinai, he gave him 2 tablets of testimony. They were stone tablets written with God's finger. Okay, so there are 2 superlatives about the tablets described in this verse. Okay, they're tablets of testimony, testifying to what? We'll see in a few minutes. And they were written with God's finger. Exactly what that means is hard to understand. These are all anthropomorphisms. God doesn't have a finger. God doesn't have a mighty outstretched hand. God doesn't blow smoke out of his nostrils. Anytime in the Torah it ascribes physical attributes to God, those are what we call anthropomorphisms. Those are things to help us understand on a human level, as if symbolically, metaphorically, as a poet would use symbolism. Okay? But of course, God doesn't have a finger. It means something, but it certainly doesn't mean that God has a physical finger that he does Etch-a-Sketch with. Okay. Now go to the bottom of the page. Verse 7. Okay, I'm skipping what they actually did to build the golden calf. Verse 7. God declared to Moses, "Go down, for the people whom you brought out of Egypt have become corrupt. They have been quick to leave the way that I ordered them to follow, and they made themselves a cast metal calf. They have bowed down and offered sacrifices to it, exclaiming, 'This Israel is your God, who brought you out of Egypt.'" God then said to Moses, "I have observed the people, and they are an unbending group. Now do not try to stop me when I unleash my wrath against them to destroy them. I will then make you into a great nation." Stop, pause for a minute. Okay? What's happening so far? Moshe Rabeinu has received the luchos on high in heaven. Okay? For our purposes, on the top of the mountain, he's still in heaven. Descending to the bottom of the mountain, he's back on earth. So he's received the luchos, then he's received the prophecy from God, information from God. Anytime a human being receives a communication from God, we call it a prophecy. And he's been informed that the golden calf has happened already. Okay? God tells him, "I plan on destroying them, and I plan on building a new nation from you." And then, verse 11, Moses begins to plead before God as Lord. He said, and you can read Moshe Rabbeinu's beautiful prayer that basically saved the Jewish people. Okay. Bottom or the middle of the page, verse 15. Verse 14, let's just fast forward. We have to kind of cut and paste because if we read every verse, we're not going to get anywhere tonight. God refrained from doing the evil that he planned for his people. Okay, so there was already a partial atonement, a partial forgiveness in Moshe Rabbeinu's prayer while he was still in heaven. Verse 15, Moshe had turned around and began going down the mountain with the 2 tablets of the testimony in his hand. There were tablets written on both sides, with writing visible from either side. The tablets were made by God and written with God's script, engraved on the tablets. Okay, so it's only after the golden calf has happened. Moshe has been informed that the golden calf has happened. He's descending the mountain already. He's done his prayer. Okay? It's only now that the full virtue of the tablets is being described by the Torah. Not only are they called the tablets of testimony over here, they're also described as the handiwork of God. They're also described as having writing visible from either side. And I'm going to expand and tell you what our oral tradition, the Talmud and Medrash, says about these properties of the Luchos very shortly. Okay? Then there's a little narrative about the tumult that he and his main disciple Joshua heard coming from the camp. Let's fast forward to verse 19. As he approached the camp and saw the calf and the dancing, Moshe displayed anger and threw down the tablets that were in his hand, shattering them at the foot of the mountain. One second. Moshe Rabeinu is told about the golden calf from God. He doesn't shatter the tablets until he sees it with his own eyes. What's that all about? Did he doubt the veracity of God? No, that's an unacceptable answer. That cannot be. He doesn't believe God. God is telling him he believed it enough to start praying for them immediately. He didn't dare say, 1 second, I can't believe this. Let me go down and check things out. I'll get back to you. No. God tells them that they've become corrupt. I'm ready to destroy them and build a new nation out of you. He goes into full-bore prayer mode. So if the reaction to the calf is the shattering of the tablets, why is he waiting to see it with his own eyes? A. B. These are not my questions. These are questions that the Gedalim Mepharshim ask. The great commentaries ask these questions. Actually, A, in chronological order. Why is the Torah waiting to describe the incredible properties of the Luchos at this point, right before they're destroyed? Talk about them when they're given. It's a pristine condition. They're given, and then the sin of the calf is described. They were in their purest form, if you will. They were the greatest gift of the Jewish people through Moshe Rabeinu before there was a sin. So talk about how great they are then. Okay, I'll take questions in a minute. I just want to tell you first, before we start addressing these questions, some of the miraculous properties of the Luchos, of the tablets that we're talking about here. Okay. The first thing is, as it says in verse 15, the tablets were made by God. Okay. What that means is, I'm just want to show you something in contradistinction to that. Fast forward to page 459. A couple pages, 459. Chapter 34, verse 1. God says to Moses, carve out 2 tablets for yourself, just like the first ones. I will write on those tablets the same words that were on the first tablets that you broke. Okay? The main qualitative difference between the first tablets and the second tablets, the second set of tablets, Moshe Rabeinu quarried them. He was a jack of many trades, apparently, Moshe Rabeinu. He could do all kinds of stuff. He could quarry stone as well. The first tablets was something that came from heaven. There's manna from heaven. Okay? They're physical. They're something that a physical flesh and blood of a human being was able to grasp onto. Okay? But there's something from heaven. Our tradition teaches us that the original Luchos, okay, were Kamasa, Livnas, Hasapir. They looked something along the lines of sapphire stones. They were gemstones. They weren't granite or slate or something like that. They were along the line of gemstones. And they were hewn from beneath the Kisei HaKavod, beneath God's throne of glory. What precisely that means, talk to your local Kabbalist. I don't know. I'm just saying over the words of our sages. Not coincidentally, okay, human souls are hewn from beneath God's throne of glory. Not coincidentally, God digs a tunnel from beneath His throne of glory to allow access for Balei Tshuva, for penitential people. So in other words, basically we're talking about the highest degree of spirituality, except in this case, I can't say made flesh, made gemstone. Okay? So that's the first thing. Haluchos Ma'aseh Elokim Heima. Okay? If we look, so to speak, if we're going to use the term libercide tonight anyway, about books, and we talk about the backgrounds upon which the data of books are written as the body, and the data of the books as their soul. So here you're talking about Moshe Rabbeinu's second luchos. You got a human body and a heavenly soul, which is the way it is with most of us, flesh and blood human beings. But in the case of the first luchos, you have a heavenly body and a heavenly soul. Okay? I think it's important to remember the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos is on enough room on this small conference table to put out both Chumashim and Sidurim, but maybe some of you remember this from Pirkei Avos studies. Pirkei Avos, it says that there were 10 things that were created in the Genesis narrative. There were 10 things that were created. Erev Shabbos Im Chasheicha, Ben Hashmashos. The eve of the Sabbath, twilight time. What's the twilight time? Twilight time is a halachically no man's land in time. Halachically. Twilight time is Suffolk Yom, Suffolk Laila. You don't know if it's day or you don't know if it's night. Practical halachic implications have to do with fixing the day of yard sites, of bar and bas mitzvahs, whether or not a child's circumcision will supersede Shabbos. Can make a difference when exactly on a Friday afternoon or a Saturday afternoon they're born. Okay? So when we talk about twilight time, we mean something that's neither here nor there. Right? Maybe it's part of Shabbos, maybe it's part of something that's not part of creation, but on the other hand, maybe it's part of the 6 days of creation. And two of the items on that is the luchos, these tablets that are being presented to Moshe Rabbeinu, v'hamichtav, and the writing that was on the luchos. Why does the writing that's upon the luchos require some kind of a special creation? You'll hear in a minute. The miraculous, by definition, these are a great aphorism of the Ramban of Nachmanides, Hanes lo yasmid. Miracles cannot be permanent, by definition. If they're permanent, they become nature and they cease to be miraculous. Okay? But sometimes you have permanent miracles. To every rule there's an exception to the rule. And the writing on the luchos was one of them. Now sages tell us, Mem v'samach shabeluchos b'neis hayomdim. The letters Mem and the letters Samach in these tablets stood by miraculous means. Why? You go, God forbid, shouldn't happen to anybody, a death in the family, you need to put up a marker, right? So you go to your monument engraver, right? And he'll sell you a stone, a slate stone, a granite stone, a marble stone, whatever he'll sell you. And you can order all different kinds of stones, all different kinds of models. Okay? Let's say the standard stone is 4 inches thick. Okay, a vertical headstone, 4 inches thick. Okay, the engraving, 1 inch deep, 3/4 of an inch deep. Okay, you want it to last for 500 years? Okay, we'll give you 3 inches deep. Right? But nobody's going to buy a 4-inch thick stone and tell the engraver, I want the letters engraved all the way through. I want to see sunlight through the other end of the stone. But that's how the engraving on these tablets worked. They went all the way through, from end to end. The problem is, when you have a circular letter, what happens to your donut hole? It should fall out. We have 2 circular letters in Hebrew. Samach, no matter where it appears in a letter, and the ending mem. Okay, when the mem is written at the end of the letter, the mem gets closed in this lower corner here. How do the mem and the samach stay legible if the engraving was all the way through? One miracle. One miraculous property, I should say, of the ksav, of the writing on these miraculous luchos. Another miracle, I'm not telling you all of them, but these should be enough to get the point across. Another miracle of the luchos is, you ever, not any attorneys in the room tonight? No, certainly not of the genus ambulance chaser, right? Okay. You ever been chased by an ambulance rather than chasing an ambulance? Ever seen an ambulance in your rear view mirror? And what does it say on the ambulance? Ambulance, right? wisely enough. However, if you're not looking at an ambulance in your rear view mirror, if you look at an ambulance, unless you're dyslexic, you're not going to be able to read the word ambulance. They write it backwards so that when it appears inverted in your rear view mirror, you should know that there's an ambulance following you. So they dafka write it backwards. Okay? So, if I have letters going through all the way from one end to another, when I'm looking at the luchas from the back, again, unless I'm dyslexic, they should be illegible. And at least according to one opinion in the Medrash, they were equally legible from either side. Which begs the question, how do you know which is the front and which is the back? I don't know if it's even important. Now there's even an opinion in the Gemara that there was writing on the luchas on the sides that was legible too. It was legible from all four sides. How does that work? We don't know. Okay? According to the laws of physics, none of this is possible. Even with fractals, even with quantum mechanics, none of this should work. It's miraculous. So, the luchas are the work of God. The writing is written, as we read, by the finger of God. Okay? And these are luchos of testimony. Okay? The Ohr HaChaim HaKadosh explains, what is the testimony? What are they testifying to? We have a rule in Judaism, Al Pi Shnei Eidim Yakum Dovid. For anything to count in a court of law, you need two valid witnesses. One is not enough. It could be a man, it could be honest Abe Lincoln. It could be George Washington who admitted he chopped down the cherry tree. Okay? Person of the utmost credibility. A single witness doesn't cut it. You need two witnesses. When you have one property of the writing of the luchas, that the mem and the samach don't fall out, even though they're engraved all the way through, and the other property where it can be read equally well from either side, okay, those are two statements of divine authorship. Okay? From the very first minute, from the first generation, where you had a Korach who led a rebellion and told Moshe Rabeinu, you're making stuff up. It's impossible. The guy commanded the mitzvah of tzitzis. If I've got a four-corner garment that's 100% made out of the blue dyed wool, and you're telling me that it still requires tzitzis, you're making this up as you go along. The Torah is not of divine authorship. And through the 19th century and the era of the Bible critics to this very day, heretics of our day, there are always people who are challenging divine authorship of the Torah. But if we still had luchos, if we still had those original luchos, okay, legible from both sides, the mem and the samach still stay standing, those are two kosher witnesses, if you will, that a human being did not write this. So that's according to Ohr HaChaim. I haven't seen a simpler explanation of what it means. The tablets of the tablets of testimony. That's his explanation for the properties of the luchos. Okay, now something that pretty much all the commentaries say is that the reason why the Torah waited until right before the smashing of the luchos to describe these more miraculous properties of the luchos is to say that Moshe Rabeinu, knowing full well what he was about to do, did it anyway. You can't say, well, he was given the luchos 2 or 3 hours ago, and he's all tumult, from his prayer and anticipating. He's got to do damage control down here. He doesn't know what awaits him against on the end of the mountain. Maybe he didn't even realize what it was he was smashing at the moment. No, the Torah emphasizes all the souped-up features, the bells and whistles, if you will, of the luchos, to let you know that knowing exactly what it was he was about to kill a book to save a people. This is the title of tonight's class, and we'll get to that again in about 20 minutes. Before I move on, any questions? I see a lot of anxious people to offer their input. Yes?
I also learned that the luchos, when it was given to Moshe Rabbeinu, it was light for him to carry. It was all heavy stones or heavy jewelry, whatever. But when he heard what happened, it became heavy in his hand, and he really had to drop it because he couldn't hold it anymore. It became heavy. That's
one of the approaches. We're going to get to that a little bit later.
What about what I said? That when he seeing is believing, and when he actually saw the calf, his anger, like, directed him.
I'm asking you a question. Does that make sense to you? Seeing, he did not believe God?
No, he did. But
So what does seeing as believing mean?
It's just like if I say to you,
No, it's not just like if you say to me, you are, with all due respect, you are not God.
I know, of course not.
Yeah,
But sometimes when you know something,
yeah.
there is a difference between knowing it, realizing it, and actually seeing it. The seeing part of it.
Okay, neither you nor I are prophets, right? But I would say that if anything, the opposite is true. Okay, we know that there are tremendous magicians, masters of sleight of hand, of smoke and mirrors, illusionists, right? Seeing is not always believing. We can see things that trump the Oliel. There are interior decorators that can do paintings on your wall and make it look 3D when it's actually 2D, right? Seeing is not always believing. The reality, the MS, the truth, is what God tells you. That is the truth. There is no truer truth than that.
The confirmation of what God said.
Why does it require confirmation?
Okay, wait, can I say, it's
Yeah.
kind of related, but,
Yeah.
so like following Lashon Hara,
Yeah.
like, when someone gives you a bad report, even if it's true, you're not supposed to believe it. And then, but then Moshe comes down and he sees it. And I'm not saying that he doesn't believe God, but you're not supposed to believe a bad report. And then he comes down, he sees it for himself.
Okay. Again, two reasons why this doesn't make sense. A, God is incapable of speaking Lashon Hara by definition. If He's speaking it, whatever. I'm not a bucky in the voluminous oeuvre of the Chavetz Chaim, but whatever loopholes, whatever Lashon Hara l'toelis, whatever you want to call it, whatever license is required to say something bad about the Jewish people, God had it. Okay, we can rest assured of that. A, B. Okay. If he's not accepting it, if he's saying, look, according to the laws of your Torah, the rule is b'tzedek tishpat hamisecha. You got to give people the innocence, the benefit of the doubt. Their innocence, they'll proven guilty. What's he making this massive prayer for? What's he saying? Lam Hashem yachra apcha b'amecha. What do you mean, Lam Hashem yachra apcha b'amecha? He should say, who said they even did it? How can I trust you? Let's go down. Then I'll worry about prayer. He obviously accepted it. He accepted it. He was reacting to it. Okay. Yes.
I don't think that Hashem said to Moshe that they were singing and happy and laughing. And dancing.
Now you're on to something.
And he came down and saw.
Now you're on to something. Okay, bingo. Let's wait. This is really one of the last things I have to say. Okay. Something else remarkable about the Luchos. Okay, let's go back. I lost my place already. Where am I here? 449 for that territory, right? Okay, architects, golden calf. Okay. Let's go back to the first verse that we examined again, 449. When God finished speaking to Moses on Mount Sinai, finished speaking to Moses. Okay, the Hebrew is kechaloso. Okay, the Hebrew reads, if you see on the facing page, verse 18, Vayiten el Moshe kechaloso l'daber ito. Now, kechaloso is spelled chaser. There is a cholam. There is a vowel letter moving. It's did I say moving? Missing. There's a vowel letter missing between the lamed and the taf. Okay? Now, this is a perfectly acceptable way of writing the word. You don't always need the vowel letter to produce the O sound. Sometimes you can just have the vowel sign, the nakuda, the dot, in the upper left-hand corner of the letter, and it successfully supplants the vav with the dot on top. Nevertheless, this is a variant spelling, and it's spelled without the vav. And our sages tell us that since it's spelled this way, there's a variant pronunciation. Instead of reading it as kechaloso, it could be read kechaloso, as his bride. Not as he finished, but as like a kala, as his bride. God gave the luchos to Moshe Rabeinu like a father would give away the bride to a groom. What's the imagery here? What does this mean? So, Our sages tell us, it seems it was traditional in Talmudic times for Jewish brides to have 24 distinct pieces of jewelry that they would get married in. 24 kishutim, 24 adornments it's called. Whether they were all actual pieces of jewelry, or maybe some of them were hair pieces, or ribbons, or I don't know exactly, but there are 24 different items that a bride adorned herself with when she got married. So our sages tells us as follows. A Talmud Chacham, one who would claim to be a scholar of the Torah, has to be a baki, has to be expert and more than conversant, has to have a thoroughgoing knowledge of the 24 books of the biblical canon. Okay, like I said, we may spend a lifetime just finishing the 5 books of Moses over here, but in what we call Tanakh, Torah, Nevi'im, Kesuvim, and the biblical canon, there are 24 distinct books, and a Talmud Chacham should know all of them. If you're going to take the Torah with all of her adornments, like a husband marries his bride. She's married, she's got all of her adornments on. Take her with all of her adornments. The adornments are described as the 24 books of the biblical canon. Meaning, forget about what it means for a Talmud Chacham. What does it mean for the layperson studying the Torah? And studying in particular the 10 Commandments. It means that the 10 Commandments were much more than just the 10 Commandments. All the soaring poetry, all the grand Jewish prophetic tradition of social justice that we associate with prophets like Jeremiah and Isaiah and Ezekiel, all the great mystical visions, all the visions of a utopian world in the Messianic era, that's all in the 10 Commandments. Rav Sadia Gaon says that the Aseret HaDibros, the 10 Commandments, contain within themselves all of the 613 commandments. And he even has a work where he shows how all some of them are pretty easy to understand. I don't know if these are as examples or not, but using our own noggin, I think we can figure out that all the mitzvahs that pertain to Kedushas Hazman, to sanctity and time, to Jewish holidays, are somehow or another related to the commandment among the 10 commandments, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. All right? All the laws of sexual morality are contained in the commandment of prohibiting adultery. All right? The many, many, many times and the permutations, all the different kind of pagan rites, Molech and Asherah. We're really not supposed to pronounce names of false deities. All right? But there are many, many places in the Torah where the Torah prohibits idolatry. Obviously, that's contained in thou shalt have no other gods before me. Now, those are pretty easy. You don't need a Rabbi Sadia Gaon. Dovid Schwartz can figure out those also. But there are many arcane mitzvahs of the Torah that you really have to scratch our heads and think for a minute, what does this have to do with any of the 10 Commandments? But trust me, there were great Jewish scholars who showed the connection, who connected the dots. And we even have a tradition, the Ohr HaChaim HaKadosh says, quoting Midrashim, quoting Chazal, that they were actually chiseled between the lines. Not all the verses of the Torah, but a list of the commandments. Again, some of you who've come to my other class know that there's a whole sub-genre of rabbinic literature called the mitzvah counters. Okay, the Sefer HaChinuch, Sefer HaMitzvos Rambam. Right? There's a whole sub-rabbinic literature of just figuring out what are the 613 mitzvahs. And the Torah prohibits idolatry 75 times. Are those 75 mitzvahs? Are those 5 mitzvahs? Are they 1 mitzvah? There are arguments among great rabbinic scholars of how to count them. But whatever the count was, whatever the actual accurate count was, Rabbi Sadia Gaon says, I'm sorry, that's Rabbi Sadia Gaon, the Ohr HaChaim quoting Midrashim, says they were between the lines. So again, you're not just talking about tablets of miraculous properties. You're talking about tablets that contained everything. Subsumed in these 10 commandments chiseled on the tablets were the balance of the mitzvahs of the Torah. Subsumed on these, adorned, if you will, somehow or another, with these tablets, were all the content, all the message, all that eternal, edifying, beautiful message that's going to come down to us through the Jewish prophets. Right? And again, all of this is what Moshe Rabeinu chose to smash and destroy when coming down when descending from the mountain.
We were really the only one who saw it.
And possibly Joshua. Possibly Joshua.
Joshua or Aaron? Joshua.
No, Aaron unfortunately had descended from the mountain there. Joshua was waiting patiently. Aaron was a major culprit in the sin of the calf. So he wasn't dancing, but he helped them form the calf itself. Okay.
He was afraid they're going to kill him if he doesn't.
Correct. Okay. So again, the question that we're trying to decide about this defining moment in Moshe Rabbeinu's career: why did he wait until he descended the mountain to smash the luchos? Why isn't he doing it at the top of the mountain when he's informed by God, which is a reality beyond all other realities and a credibility beyond even what our five senses can reveal to us? Why is he waiting until he gets to the bottom of the mountain? So before I give you some of the answers of the Kli Yakar and a few other commentaries, I just want you to understand Moshe Rabbeinu's relationship with the people that he, quote unquote, got so angry at. And again, it's not really tonight's class, the actual sin of the golden calf and Moshe Rabbeinu's reaction to the golden calf, but it's really quite striking how he's so defensive of and apologetic for the Jewish people when talking to God about them vis-a-vis the golden calf, and how stern and draconian and almost sadistic he is in dealing with the idolaters themselves. But again, that's another topic. When God says to Moshe Rabbeinu, don't try to beseech me, okay? Let me destroy them. They've got it coming, okay? And I will build a great nation out of you. Our sages tell us that the preamble to his prayer was this. Now, if I was in Moshe Rabbeinu's place, insecure, egomaniacal, narcissistic person that I am, I'd say, that sounds like a great deal. You know, I'm going to come out of this alive, A. B, it's not exactly like it's without precedent. There was an Adam. There was a whole world populated by B'nai Adam, by children of Adam. They messed up. They screwed up in the generation of the deluge, of the great flood. And there was this one person, Noach, that humanity was rebuilt from. We call human beings today, the Jewish position calls them B'nai Noach, Noahites. Okay? Every extant human being today, of course, is descended from Adam, but more to the point, is descended from Noach. Let's wipe out, let's start tabula rasa, okay? They do it in Hollywood all the time. They don't like the way the scene came out. Take two. The original take ends up on a cutting room floor and in post-production. Take two. I don't like this scene. Let's start it over again. Let's get it right this time. Happened before in human history. Why can't Moshe Rabbeinu say, you know something, God? I got to agree with you. This is outrageous. This is egregious. 40 days ago, the Jews received your Torah. Right before that, you parted the Red Sea for them. Right before that, you slayed the Egyptian firstborn. You did all the 10 plagues. All this wonderful stuff. So soon after all of that, they're worshiping idols? Nah. Losers. Low quality stuff. Start from me. I'll tell you, it's to lighten up the mood here a little bit tonight. There's a famous story to tell one of the great Hasidic masters, Reb Chaim Sanzer. I don't know who Reb Chaim Sanzer's father was. My mind is beginning to go. I'm sure he was a great man, but his son was greater. At any rate, I think he was an orphan at a very young age. At any rate, the story is told how in this Polish city of Novi Sącz, the Jews called it Sons, a fire breaks out in the town, and the home of Reb Chaim Sanzer's family is burning to a crisp, burning down to the ground. And his mother is standing outside the house, weeping. She's disconsolate. Nobody can calm her down. And finally, her 7-year-old son, Chaimel, approaches her and he says, Mama, was meinst du? Eitzim vavunim. He says, what are you crying about? For sticks, for stones, for architecture? What do you care? You're a very spiritual woman. This is not something that should affect you. The house is burnt. We'll get a new house. What's the big deal? So he says, man, Kind versteht, doesn't give a yichus bizrashe. He says, you don't understand. There was a genealogical chart, a priceless family heirloom in that house that traced our family's yichus, a family line, back to the great Rashi, the medieval sage, the commentary of the Torah par excellence. That's the ultimate yichus. Parenthetically, Rashi traditionally is descended from King David. Right? So, that's the ultimate. To be able to draw your family line back to Rashi, ooh, wow. Right? Okay, that's already a little bit more spiritual, right? So he looks at her and says, Mama Zognish, Ichalun Haiben Hashana Rabeinu. He says, don't worry. He says, I'm going to start a new family tree that'll be even prettier. Okay, a lot of moxie, a lot of self-confidence for a young boy. But why didn't Moshe Rabbeinu have the same reaction? Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, they tried. They produced some nice Jews along the way, some nice human beings along the way. But B'sach Hakel, they messed up. The Dar Midbar, the generation of the wilderness, shall go down in infamy like the generation of the flood. Let's start again. I'll be the new Noah. Parenthetically, in Jewish thought, there's a spiritual connection between Noah and Moshe Rabbeinu. They're both people who survived death by water in Tevis. Okay. At any rate, but here is one of the defining moments right away before the smashing. The difference between Noah and Moshe is, okay, humanity gets destroyed as long as me and my family are safe. Sounds like a plan. Moshe Rabbeinu's reaction with this, Moshe Rabbeinu told God, he said, if a stool with 3 sturdy legs cannot stand, is unstable, he said, you expect a unicycle to have stability? 3 patriarchs built this people. And those of you who were here for last week's class know a little bit about that. Well, since when, does it take 3 fathers on Father's Day? We discussed that last week. Right? You expect from one person, you think you're going to get better results? No way. Noble, captain going down with the ship, you can interpret it a lot of ways. My understanding of this Chazal has always been another testimony to Moshe Rabbeinu's unbelievable humility and his being a member of the people, a leader of the people, but a first among peers, one of them. My fate is bound up with them. I'm nothing without them. I'm not a patriarch. I'm not about to start anything new. Right? And this is how he begins his prayer to God. Forget about it. Forget about this plan of wiping out the Jewish people and starting something new with me. If a stool built on 3 legs cannot stand, a stool that's supposed to totter on 1 leg is certainly not going to stand. Strike that plan. Let's try something else. Let's see if we can fix this. Yes.
I was going to say to be human is to err, but I still am back to, you asked originally why did he break the stones, and I still believe it when he saw what God already told him. The human reaction to it was that he got so angry and overwhelmed and disappointed. He had been with these people all the 40 years in the desert. He had worked with them. And
this is year 1 in the desert. This is not year 40 in the desert.
In Egypt.
Okay.
He had been through all the plagues with them. He had been through so much with them. And he wanted to preserve his people and be with them. And he was loyal to them and he had faith in them. And like you said, they made a mistake. And they were human. And so was Moses. And I think that's why he smashed the commandments, because he too was human, and when he saw what God described and he actually saw it and he felt it, you don't know what you're going to feel until you see it in action. He became so overwhelmed, so angry, so disappointed that the tablets went down, and I think it was also saying for the moment, you don't deserve these tablets, like a punishment, but it was a temporary anger, a temporary response to feeling what he had heard God say. You don't really know how you're going to react.
Okay, it was a temporary response with very permanent results.
Well,
Okay, I haven't even
it wasn't perfect.
I haven't even begun to speak about the permanent results of this act of Moshe Rabeinu. Okay, yes.
Isn't somebody gets angry, isn't that equated with idolatry? I read that somewhere. Because like you're not trusting God, and that's...
It's more than that. You're really hitting the nail on the head, because just anger, without acting out of the anger, it's not a noble midah, it's not a noble character trait, but it's not idolatry yet. You start smashing the crockery, that's idolatry. Who smashed crockery more than Moshe Rabeinu? What?
Yeah,
He smashed idols.
idols.
Okay, right. He was not a biblioclast or somebody performing libercide. He was an iconoclast. He was a guy smashing idols. We're not talking about smashing idols. We're talking about smashing something very worthwhile that's akin to smashing idols.
How is something that was created by God be able to be busted up by man? But then you can say,
I think
bodies, we abuse our bodies.
I was about to say that. You could ask the same question on our own bodies and our own selves. That's the conundrum of predestination versus free will. He made us autonomous, however that works and whatever that means. Yeah, he withdrew in a certain sense his authority to allow us room to exercise our own free will, even to something as ultimately as bad as this. Okay, so let's start getting to some of the answers provided by some of the great commentaries here. Okay. The Yalkut says, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier in the class, that the writing on the tablets was miraculous, and a miracle occurred upon the descent from the mountain. Okay, so it really wasn't so much necessarily about Moshe Rabbeinu waiting to see things with his own eyes, as it was the Luchos. The Luchos are almost described as living human beings, which really isn't too far a stretch, again, considering that the body of the Luchos is the handiwork of God, like the body of man, and the Osios themselves, which are voids. I mean, what is it? It's something chiseled. It's not even there. It's only something that's visible within the background. What is the writing itself? Right? So the Yalkut says that the Osios, the letters that were inscribed on the tablets, flew off the tablets. Targum Yonasan ben Uziel elaborates a little bit more, and it says, as these letters, I should say, flew off the tablets, and then the stones, as it were, closed up. All right, they became tabula rasa again, blank slates with nothing written on them. As these osios flew off the tablets, they spoke. And they said, woe to a people that heard on Mount Sinai so recently, thou shalt have no other gods before me, do not make any graven images. And here they're going and they're worshiping a calf. And the significance of the osios flying off the luchos was, as Ms. Bennett said a little bit earlier, later we got luchos shnios. And even the luchos shnios, even the second set of tablets, where the tablets were made by Moshe Rabeinu, but the writing was still the writing of God, there was something about the nature of the tablets that was still miraculous, and that was ha'aron noseas nosef. The Ark of the Covenant, okay, had these staves, had these sticks that came out of them on either end. And when the Jews in the desert would break camp and they would have to walk from one location to another, so it was considered the highest honor to carry the Ark of the Covenant. As a matter of fact, Korach, the infamous schismatic, the one who led that rebellion against Moshe Rabbeinu before he went sour, he was from the Nosei Haron. He was one of the Levites who had this august honor of carrying the Aron from one end to another. Okay? And these sticks were very significant because even when the Aron came to its permanent resting place in the temple in the Holy of Holies of Jerusalem, they never removed the sticks. It was something that was there permanently. And one of the miracles of the sticks was Ha'aron Noseas Nosef, which means there was a kind of levitation going on. To the casual observer, it looked like four burly Levites it must be heavy, must weigh close to a ton. I'm not even telling you what the dimensions of the tablets were, or what the specific gravity of sapphire or granite or whatever the second. I have no idea what the second luchas were made out of. It wasn't that way. It was light as a feather. The Aron carried those who apparently were carrying it. Right? Parenthetically, before we move on with tonight's topic, the homiletic message of this is that people always have it backwards. People think they cut a check to a yeshiva. Oh, I'm supporting the Torah scholars. I'm supporting the Bachram Chavetz Chaim. I'm supporting the Young Light on Lakewood Yeshiva. It's not that way. You may think that you're supporting the Torah, but the Torah is really what's carrying you. That's the property of Torah. It carries those who carry it. So, Moshe Rabbeinu is bringing down these heavy stones from heaven. As long as they've got their soul attached to them, as long as the Torah content, the Torah data is there, it's carrying it. When, not Moshe Rabbeinu was incredulous of God, okay? But the prophecy was said to Moshe Rabbeinu, God was not addressing the luchas. Leich reid ki shichei samcha. You go down, your nation has been corrupted. Right? When the luchas came within close geographical proximity of the impurity, of the voiding of spirituality that idolatry represents, that's when they flew off. And when they flew off, they became untenable. Moshe Rabbeinu could not carry these blank, heavy stones anymore, and that's what fell down and shattered. Because that's kind of a cheap way out. Okay, so it really has nothing to do with Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu's reaction, Moshe Rabbeinu would not necessarily even have smashed the luchas, right? The luchas themselves took umbrage, as it were at the sin of the golden calf. The letters flew off. The stones became incredibly heavy. They fell down, and that was the shattering of the stones. Okay.
Then I go back.
No. Now I want to finish the class, and I'll take any more questions or comments at the end of the class. So, here's the answer that really tonight's class takes its title from. Kill a book to save a people. And remember, that was the prime directive for Moshe Rabbeinu. That was the number one thing that he was interested in doing. He wanted to save the Jewish people, even at the cost and of the glory of building a new Jewish people out of himself. That he wasn't interested in. He wanted to save the Jewish people as they were right. So before I can tell you this medrash and the Kliyaka's tweak on the medrash, I have to tell you something in general about one of the Havdalas ben Yisrael L'Am, and one of the differences between Jews and the balance of humanity, vis-a-vis paganism, idolatry, avodah zarah, whatever you want to call it. It's absolutely forbidden for any human being to worship an idol, to sacrifice or to bow down to a graven image. Whether duality, whether not being a strict monotheist, is prohibited to the nations of the world's argument between Maimonides and others. But certainly, bowing to idols, sacrifice to idols, wine libations, all the traditional kind of things that the ancients used to do when being idolaters, that's forbidden to all of humanity. But there's a big difference between whether Noahide worships an idol and when a Jew worships an idol. When a Noahide worships an idol, they're transgressing a cardinal sin, and they're offending God in a very fundamental way. They're offending good sense. Any straight-thinking theologian should basically come up with monotheism and a God that is without form and is infinite. Nevertheless, that's the extent of it. It's a sin, it's a heinous sin, but it's not a betrayal. The Jewish people have a covenantal relationship with God. The Jewish people collectively are God's bride, as it were. Now, we spoke earlier about the imagery of the Torah coming down adorned like a bride with 24 adornments. Okay? If you look throughout the Torah, the imagery that's always mentioned about Jewish idol worship is that of an adulterous wife, of a faithless wife. We just had it in the Haftarah last week. The prophet Jeremiah, when chastising, when dressing down the Jewish people, Yirmiyahu says, Al kol har gavoah, v'tachas kol eitz ranan, at tzoa zona. Upon all high and exalted mountain, and beneath every verdant tree, you were stretched out like a prostitute. Kemisbar arecha hayu elecha Yehuda. O Judah, Judea, as numerous as thy cities, that's how many gods you've had. All right? Not just an adulterous wife, but, sleeping with the whole town, as it were. All right? Just totally faithless, totally betraying of the husband. All right? The word kana, the word jealous, that appears in the Torah, is always said in terms of God's reaction to idol worship. It's the same precise word that's used in the Torah to describe the reaction of a husband to an adulterous wife. In the Kriya Shema that we read every day, talking about heresy and talking about avodah zarah, talking about idolatry for Jews, it says, "V'lo sasuru acharei levavchem v'acharei einechem, asher atem zonim achareim." Do not stray after your eyes and after your hearts, that you do znus with. Znus means a sexual indiscretion. That's always the imagery. It's a betrayal of love. Right? When the Talmud wants to learn out why a Jew has to lay down his or her life rather than worship an idol, it says, love the Lord your God with all of your soul, and the avera, the transgression, that is the antonym of the love of God, is idolatry. That's the whole scriptural source for having to lay down your life. God says over here, I want b'chol nafshcha. I want even if it means giving up your soul, even if it means giving up your life. Love has to be even at the cost of your own life. Really, really pointed, if you will, imagery. And it really echoes what I just said from the Targum Yais and how the letters of the Luchas reacted when they saw the Jews worshiping the golden calf. Describing what the Jews did with the golden calf, our sages tell us, Aluva kala shezinsa toch chupasa. I'll wait for a minute on the translation of that. You speak to marriage counselors and they'll tell you, the real troubled waters of a marriage are years 5 through 15. Okay? Most marriages, if they break up, it's during those years. Statistically,
that's some span.
5 through 15. 15. Right. Yeah. Sibling rivalry is different. I always tell the parents of little kids, 6-year-olds that are fighting around, don't worry, it's nothing that won't wear off in 50, 60 years. But at any rate, this is what marriage counselors will tell you. That, if you can make it past the first 15 years, you're pretty much in the clear. Okay? Look, there are people who defy the statistics. There are couples that are faithless to one another within the first 10 years. There are couples that are faithless to one another before the first anniversary. There are even stories of couples that are faithless to one another on the honeymoon. But try to imagine if in the middle of the wedding hall, okay, somebody's going off to a day rate motel, right? What are you, crazy? What did you get married for in the first place? Right? Our sages say about the Jews at Sinai, at the foot of Sinai, they're worshiping the golden calf. Aluva kala shezinsa teichup asa. Disgusting, reprehensible as a bride who's committing adultery under the chuppah. She's still under the chuppah, and she's committing adultery. So the Medrash says as follows. You want to know why Moshe Rabeinu smashed the tablets? It's very simple. Let's say there's a king in a far-off province, and there's a princess in another far-off province, and the king wants to get married by surrogate. Power of attorney. He writes a power of attorney to one of his ministers and says, look, here's the marriage contract. Take it to Princess, fill in her name, Joanna, and present it to her, and then we'll be legally, lawfully married as if I had handed it over to her myself. Says Moshe Rabeinu, he sees the scene, and he says as follows. Yeah, I knew it was happening before, but the location wasn't emphasized to me. We're here at Sinai. Sinai is supposed to be a chuppah. Torah tziva lanu Moshe mo rasha kilas Yaakov. Torah was commanded to us by Moshe, an inheritance, a legacy for the Jewish people. The Medrash says, Al tikre mo rasha ela ma'orasa. Don't read the word ma'orasha, legacy. Read the word ma'orasa, nuptials, betrothed. This is an act of betrothal. If I give the Jews the luchos, they're married. And what's going on now is not premarital infidelity. It's adultery. It's not somebody who was engaged to be married and thought better of it and chose a different lover. It's a married woman committing adultery. That's a capital offense. Then God will be right to want to annihilate them. Better that the luchos, this wonderful, beautiful contract, marriage contract, love letter, book of laws, book of social justice, however you want to understand the luchos, and all that it contains, and all the superlatives we talk about it. It's better that that should bite the dust than that the Jewish people should be guilty of such an heinous crime. So he's trying to mitigate things. The same way he tries to reduce God's anger through prayer, he's trying to reduce God's anger through a legal maneuver, as it were. Okay? Let's see, if we can get this down from murder 1 to murder 3. From adultery in the first degree to premarital sex. Also not pretty, but not a capital offense. The Kli Yakar says it a little bit differently, quoting a different medrash. He says if there's a promissory note, okay, you wrote somebody an IOU. I owe you $1 million if I do X, Y, Z. It's a conditional promissory note, right? And the promissory note gets ripped up. Then you say to the plaintiff, if a guy brings a lawsuit against you, you owe me $1 million. I told you not to eat a pound of bananas. You ate a pound of bananas. You now owe me $1 million. Well, you can certainly bring credible witnesses that I ate the pound of bananas, but show me the document where it says that I now owe you $1 million. He tore up the document. He tore up the promissory note. It's a gift from God. It's sapphire. It's the work of God. It's got miraculous properties to it. I don't care. I don't want the Jews to default on their loan. I'm killing a book to save the people. But the most beautiful answer, I believe, of the Kli Yakar, and this is expanded on also by the great Reb Tzadok HaKohen of Lublin, just to understand their answer a little bit better. What would you say? Remember, I started off the class by telling you about the different historical events that happened on Shavuos B'Tammuz, and I mentioned that there was an act of libercide perpetrated by Apostamos HaRasha. There was this burning of a Torah scroll. Okay? What would you say about a Jew, not a Greek, not a pagan, pantheon-believing Greek, a Jew who, in a fit of anger and a fit of pique, would walk into your local synagogue, Kiruv Center, Chabad house, whatever, throw open the doors of the ark, remove one of the Torah scrolls, douse it with gasoline, and light a match to it. Reprehensible, disgusting. Can you imagine a Jew like that? Now, what if it's not a layperson? What if somebody walks around with the title Rabbi? What do you think of that? Even worse, all right? How about this? Okay? Not Stam a rabbi. Okay? Rabbi of a congregation, pulpit rabbi. He's giving a speech before Musaf, and he notices 15, 20 guys are following out the back door. They're members of the Kiddush Club. They're breaking out the single malt scotch. And he gives a clap on the left and he says, I've had it. This is it. I refuse to be humiliated anymore. I'm trying to give you divrei Torah. You don't deserve the Torah. And on Shabbos, in front of his own congregation, he pulls out a Sefer Torah and he burns it. He immolates it. This rabbi is one of two things. Okay? He's either nuts or very wicked. Take your pick. If he hasn't taken leave of his senses, okay, if he's still a responsible, free will exercising human being, then this is a heinous crime. And it's a crime of, as you mentioned earlier, when you break things in anger, it's one thing to be angry. To err is human. Sometimes people are angry. They have angry reactions. But to act out on your anger in a way where you actually destroy something of worth, okay, our sages say that's idolatry. Okay, it's a whole other class. Why it's compared to idolatry? For right now, let's take it on faith. Okay, it's a kind of idolatry. You know what Moshe Rabeinu was doing when he broke the luchos? He got angry. Yeah, it was a willful anger. He acted out on that anger. God, you want to destroy the Jewish people and start again for me? I'm in the same sin as they are. You're going to say, well, it's very simple. They're guilty and you're innocent. No. I'm guilty too. I'm an idolater too. I took your word, your divine word, your handiwork, I smashed it to smithereens. I'm one of them. Reb Tzadok goes a step further. I destroyed a book to save a people. That's called an Aveira Lishma. That's what we call. Sometimes you have to transgress the Torah for the greater glory of heaven. Okay? There are many examples, most notably among great Jewish women. I'll mention two, Yael and Esther. Okay? They both did things that, from a technical, pedantic viewpoint, sinful behavior. But they did it for the greater good of saving the Jewish people. That's called an Aveira Lishma. By Moshe Rabeinu making himself into a kind of idolater, okay, and joining up in the sin of his people, he accomplishes two things. First of all, this captain is going down with the ship. He's, in a certain sense, as tzaddikim will do, they try supplication, but sometimes they paint God into a corner. You think you're going to have some material to start a new Jewish people with? Nothing doing. They're guilty of idolatry? What's a worse idolatry? You know, bowing your head a little bit to a golden calf, or taking the word of God and smashing it to smithereens. It's a worse heresy. I'll put it that way. A. B. If you look kindly upon my act, as it were, of idolatry, of heresy, and he did, there's a very famous drush of Chazal, as haluchas harishayim asher shibarta, the first tablets which you destroyed. I say that word asher can be morphed into the expression yashakayach shashibata. I thank you, yashakayach. Your strength should be magnified for having broken the tablets. Why? Because he understood that it was a selfless act to save the Jewish people. And if I'm creating a common denominator, commonality between my behavior and their behavior, what they did too, yes, it was an Aveira, but there was some Lishma in it too. And again, without getting in great depth into the sin of the golden calf, the Jews had said, Moshe Rabbeinu, who led us out of Egypt, is gone. He's not coming back. The story was, he was half a day late descending the mountain according to their mistaken calculation. He wasn't late even by a minute, but according to their calculations, he was half a day late. They thought that he had perished. Here they are in a withering, unforgiving desert, no more leadership. And they thought that somehow or another, this calf, which was really an image that they saw from one of the sides of God's throne of glory when the heavens opened up at the giving of the Torah at Sinai, one of the sides of the throne has the mushar, has the image of an ox on it. So they thought this will be the thing that will lead us into the promised land. So they're not really giving up the mission. They still want to fulfill what God had in mind for them. They still want to come to the land of Israel and fulfill the mitzvahs that you need to be in the land of Israel to fulfill. But they need leadership. It was a mistake. It morphed. It was a slippery slope that culminated in real idolatry. Right? But in a certain sense, it was an Aveira Lishma. So it was an Aveira for the sake of heaven. It was an Aveira for very good intentions. So Moshe Rabbeinu, by smashing the luchos, is, on the one hand, making himself a sinner akin to the sins of the children of Israel, and on the other hand, says Reb Tzadok, raising the level of their sin from just a bald, passionate, irrational sin to the level of something that, the path to hell is paved with good intentions, but at least there were good intentions. At least there were some noble intentions involved over here. That's my class for tonight.
Heavy.
Okay, can we answer why did he wait until he went to the bottom of the mountain?
He waited till he went to the bottom of the mountain because in heaven you can't sin. According to which answer do you want to know?
I have an answer.
Oh, 1 second. I'm sorry. I need 5 more minutes because I have to address her answer. She was machav. Yes, one more answer, and then we'll go through how all of them. I'll repeat for you off tape how if it hasn't been clear until now, how it addresses the real question. The Svarnai says as follows. The Svarnai says that God didn't editorialize; He just reported. They were corrupted. They're worshiping an idol. The style with which they worshipped an idol, that God didn't describe. My Rashidas Zatzal says as follows. He says, everyone's mitzvah is priceless. Oh, okay, you brought up some drinks, too good. Everyone's mitzvah is priceless. Okay? You said it's a one-of-a-kind item, every mitzvah that we do, and you set the worth of your own mitzvah. How do you set the worth of your own mitzvah? There are two ways. One is revealed to us already by the sages of the Talmud. L'fum tzara agra. According to the pain is the gain, as it were. The more pain, the more suffering, the more hassle you're willing to go through to fulfill a mitzvah, to perform a mitzvah, to desist from a sin, that your reward will be commensurate to that, will be in accordance with that. But there's another arbiter, and that's simcha shal mitzvah. The more joy you bring to the enterprise, the greater your enjoyment, the greater the fulfillment that you feel out of fulfilling a mitzvah. So you've named your own price, as it were. You've shown how meaningful it is to you. That's how meaningful it becomes to God. Sadly, the opposite is also true of an Avera. I always love telling over this great Chassidish story. The Rebbe Zisha was given, not an Aliyas Neshama, not a tour of heaven, he was given a tour of one of the cauldrons of hell. And in hell, he sees this mountain and there's this ragtag army assembling on the mountain, and it's unbelievable. He's never seen such a motley crew. They're headless horsemen, they're quadruple amputees, the uniforms are tattered, the armor is tarnished, the swords are bent, the spearheads are rusty, guys have eyes gouged out. They look like a medium wind could knock over the whole army. And he asks his guide, what is this? What are these guys? He says, it's very simple. He says, from every Aveira, from every transgression, a Malach Mashchis is created, a avenging angel is created. You don't like the idea of an avenging angel? A negative spiritual energy is created, as embodied in these angels and these demons, whatever you want to call them. When a Jew sins, they're never completely in it. Sometimes their heart isn't in it, sometimes their eyes aren't in it, sometimes their mind isn't in it. And therefore, the spirituality, the metaphysical creations that come out of their actions are these mutants, these amputees. They can't be whole, they're not wholesome. Okay? We all talk about guilty pleasures, but we're really looking for are guiltless pleasures. The pleasures would be so much more pleasurable without the guilt, wouldn't they? Okay, but that's the Jewish condition. We're guilty. At the moment that we're doing it, we're already guilty. Right? But what if we're not guilty? What if we're exultant? What if we're joyous? What if we're happy? What if this is the ultimate in our whole experiential framework? It doesn't get any better than this. Says the Svarnai, when Moshe Rabeinu saw that they were dancing, they were not just worshiping in a dry, formal, High Church of England kind of formality, right? They were having a party. This is great, This is fun. This kind of a God I enjoy worshiping. This is tremendous. As the prophet Jeremiah says, Ki ra'aschi az ta'alayzi. When you do evil, that's when you exult. That's when you're happy. I thought I would be able to fix this. I had a good start. I had a very good prayer on high. I got a stay of execution. Maybe we can still work this out. Maybe it's still tenable to give these miraculous stones to the Jewish people to patch up the marriage in contravention of all the other pshat, all the other approaches I told you up until now. Until Moshe Rabbeinu saw with his own eyes, not the act, not the fact of worshiping the idol, but as you said, the joy and the exulting that they were doing worshiping the idol, this is beyond repair. This is not Torah that they can absorb anymore. Boom. We have to shatter it. Okay, take two. That is my class for tonight.
Good night, Rabbi.
Okay.
I have no less than 5 questions.
Okay.
So number one, do we have...
And I have no more than 30 minutes. Is that a deal? Okay, ladies and gents, we can schmooze and eat at the same time. Please make a bracha. We got some nice. Let's not call it mandel bread. Let's call it biscotti. It becomes a lot more fun that way. Comes a guilty pleasure.
Do we know where the tablets are now? Do we have any idea?
Amen.
weed and the stuff like that.
Or any time, I don't mind if you edit out the eating and drinking. Do we have any idea where the tablets are now?
Yeah.
I like it.
There was no Ark of Covenant in the Second Temple. The foundation stone, the Muslims have on that side something called the Dome of the Rock. Okay, that was our rock originally. The Jewish tradition, that's the foundation stone. That's if you're a Big Bang theorist, that's the point where creation unspools from.
The Dome of the Rock?
No, the rock of the rock.
The rock?
Right, that rock is in a... Oh, 1 second. You left these by me.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay. So in the Second Temple, right, in Herod's temple, the Ark was never there. Okay? According to our tradition, anyway. What's on the Arch of Titus, if they show pictures of them carrying away an Ark, I'm not quite sure. According to our tradition, the Ark never made it out of the First Temple. Solomon had built catacombs beneath the Temple Mount for just the occasion of, he saw prophetically, had an intuition that this wasn't going to last forever, his temple. And when the day came that when the temple was sacked, there would be a place to hide the Ark. So wherever they're hidden, somewhere, subterranean beneath the Temple Mount, that's as much as we know. But about the existence, archaeologists have been digging there, for more than a century. To the best of my knowledge, they have no clue as to where these catacombs are or where the Ark is.
Okay.
So on.
The second is,
Yeah.
if students and a rabbi were engaged in talking about something, the rabbi said, don't do this, then the students would respectfully back off.
Right.
So how much more so if Moshe's talking with Hashem and Hashem says, don't try to stop me. Where is the humility? Where is I would just say okay and back off and not try to negotiate.
Okay, two answers to this one. Rashi on the spot says, that again it helps to have a flavor of the original Hebrew. It loses something in the translation, but the original Hebrew is herath mimeni, which means lay off of me. Lay off of me. What do you mean? I haven't started in on you. So on the contrary, okay, sometimes a wise student will discern from the words of the master, from the rabbi, okay, that read between the lines. I'm not saying what I mean and I'm not meaning what I say. On the contrary, Rashi on the spot says he was telling him, start praying. If I'm telling you to stop and you haven't started yet, you better start. Okay? Number one. Number two, and this goes filed in the category of don't try this at home, kids. You have to know that there were great tzaddikim from the biblical era through the Talmud, through the Hasidic era. I'm afraid to say, I'm not sure if there are any tzaddikim like this anymore today, that sometimes are the Alan Dershowitzes of the court on high. They get by on chutzpah. Okay? They don't supplicate to God on bended knee. They shake a fist at God and say, how dare you do this? Okay? Most famous in recent history was the great Barditchev, Levi Yitzchak of Barditchev. Okay? One Rosh Hashanah, Levi Yitzchak of Barditchev said as follows. He said, I'm not only a Hasidic master, I'm the rabbi of the town of Barditchev. All ritual matters I rule on. And I'm telling you, God, you've got 3 books open today on Rosh Hashanah. Okay? And some people you want to write for death. It's Shabbos. You're not allowed to write on Shabbos. The only rabbinic dispensation to write on Shabbos is to save a life. Write all the Jews into the book of life, then I allow you to write on Shabbos. You don't, I'm forbidding you to write in your book. Don't try this at home, kids. Levi Yitzchak can do this. Okay, I'm just giving you an example. Yitzchak Avinu, Patriarch Yitzchak. When God says, your sons have sinned, you know what his first reaction is? Oh, all of a sudden they're my sons. They're not your sons anymore? You called them my firstborn son Israel, and all of a sudden they're my son. I'm not making this up. I couldn't make this up. This is in the Gemara. Gemara Shabbos, yes. You don't want to let her finish her 5 questions? Her half hour isn't up yet. Okay. Ask her. It's okay with me. Okay.
Doesn't the fact that Moses prayed for the Jewish people and asked God to forgive them, isn't that today show us the power of prayer whenever we're in need of it, personally or the whole world.
Absolutely. Sure. 100%. The ultimate forgiveness for the sin of the calf, which I can't say the ultimate because the truth is there is still something left over in terms of retribution and punishment for the sin of the calf. But the ultimate forgiveness of the sin of the calf was embodied, was manifested when God handed Moshe Rabeinu the second set of luchos. He ascended to heaven with blank stones, and God inscribed them and gave them back and said, okay, salati k'dvarecha, I have forgiven as you have requested. You know what day that is on the Jewish calendar? We have a name for that day. You know what day that is?
Yom Kippur.
Yom Kippur. Enough said. Yes?
When Moshe said, why would, to try to create a world out of one person when, our matriarchs and our patriarchs couldn't do it.
Right.
Like, Hashem knew that Moshe would react that way. And he knew that also was true. So why did they have that exchange? What was the purpose of that exchange?
It's a good question, okay, but I don't hear it as a Moshe specific question. It's really a question on any prayer. Any prayer that any human being from the beginning of time till the end of time will ever utter, God is aware of it before it happens. So why bother waiting for it? I don't know. That's the dynamic of prayer. That's the